Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Justin Piche. From his days as a U.S. Navy submarine officer to his role as an engineer at ExxonMobil, he's always thrived on challenges. Today, he's channeling this passion into the realm of land investing and development. Justin has quickly and successfully scaled a seven-figure land business by investing heavily in his systems, processes, and team. He currently employs 12 and has over 100 deals under his belt and is managing more than a dozen land subdivides, creating 82 lots in the process. His background in chemical engineering from LSU proves useful in navigating the complexities of real estate. However, at the heart of it all, Justin's world revolves around the simple joys of life with his wife, Juliana, their two children, and the third one on the way. Justin, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
Hey, Kendall, thank you very much. That was quite the introduction, and it's an honor to be on your podcast.
Super excited to have you. We have a lot of mutual connections, so I'm glad we could finally get some time on the books to sit down and have a conversation. Congratulations, by the way, a third Piche on the way.
Yeah.
Tell us, how did you get started in doing land deals?
That's a great question. I started investing in land deals by copying a friend of mine who was doing land deals. So back in like 2020, 2019, 2020, I started investing in single family rentals, house wholesaling, short-term rental. I bought a large home in Asheville, and I was looking to get into land because it seemed like for the amount of money that you put into a deal, the profit potential was significantly higher than what I was doing in homes. I buy a house for $100,000 and they expect to make a $20,000, maybe $25,000 profit on the high end. And for the amount of risk and the amount of time and the amount of effort, my friend Kyle Bryant, who some of you guys may know him, but he had started investing in land back in 2019 and was having a ton of success. And so we would spitball. We're both from Houston. I live in Houston, Texas, and he lived just a half mile down the street. We went to the same church. We were in the same small group. And we would talk often about, hey, what's working for you? What's working for me? How are you doing mail? And the biggest kind of thing that was hey, do land, was the amount of mail that he was sending per deal was like a fraction of how much mail I was sending to do a single deal. Yeah, that's what got me started.
Yeah, always good to have a springboard and be able to bounce ideas off of people. So you had this colleague that was helping you in the land business when you first started. How else did you learn? Did you have any types of coaches or mentors, go through any courses?
Yeah, no. So basically, when I talked to Kyle, I was like, "Hey, man, could you teach me? Will you just teach me this? I'll pay you. Pay $5,000, I'll pay $10,000, whatever. Teach me how to do this as quickly as possible." But at the time, he had actually gone through Learn.land. Clint Turner, who I'm sure most people on here know, he's a big educator in the space, exceptional. Actually, Kendall and I are going to probably see each other in person tomorrow.
Yeah,
at Clint's event up in Dallas, but. Yeah, so I decided, hey man, I just wholesaled a house for a $30,000 wholesale fee, and I put half of that into coaching and education, and just went all in. That was September of 2021.
Excellent. I love it. So you had this background in doing houses. I also got my start in doing houses as well until I actually saw the light and started doing land. So talk to us about your very first land deal. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so obviously a mailer. I had sent a mailer beginning of October 2021 to North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and just targeted 5 to 40 acre tracts. I didn't really have a price per se in mind. I did price it, arranged mailer, and got a ton of callbacks at that time, and pretty quickly got 4 deals under contract from that mailer, right off the bat. I think it was a 5,000 piece mailer. So pretty solid mail return on there. And the first one that actually went full cycle, I closed to sell in February of 2022. And so it was just a 9.2 acre kind of mountainous tract, no road frontage, but it had an easement, real nice kind of southern exposure, sloping, beautiful, looking through a valley, and sold that for, I think I bought it at 18 and sold it at 38. So it was about after fees and stuff, it was like a $20,000 profit on the first deal.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And were you hooked?
Oh, yeah. I remember exactly where I was when I finally got it under contract, because I was actually in Asheville. I'm at my short-term rental. And my wife, I'm still working at this time, I was still working full-time for ExxonMobil. I had a brand new baby. Life was literally insane. And I'm just sitting on the couch and I just see my DocuSign go like the little alert. And I was like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
I got it under contract and pretty quickly closed. It was just a check, the first one, show my wife, hey, proof of concept.
Yeah, this stuff works without having to go out to the property, without having to do any type of like repairs or estimates or anything like that. So much more simple compared to houses, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
100%.
Love it. Love it. So after that first deal, how did you start growing your business? You had proof of concept. What were the next steps that look like?
Yeah. So for me, it was just, my job at Exxon wasn't like a particularly easy role. I was an engineer, a supervisor at a manufacturing site. And so I was like, it was tough to answer. I had no employees at the time for the first several months because I didn't really know exactly what I was doing. I was like, I should probably figure this out myself and understand the steps of marketing, the steps of negotiating contracts, transaction coordination, all the way through the sale and dispositions of it before bringing people on. Maybe not necessarily the smartest in hindsight. I probably could have gotten started a little faster, bringing on some help, but it worked. I got it done. And so the next step was really just lining up enough deals, investing really heavily in marketing to line up enough deals to replace my income. Because at that time, this is kind of not answering your question, but I think it is valid or important to understand how I scaled the business. It was at that time, I was getting a new role at Exxon that was going to provide a whole lot less work from home flexibility.
Mm.
And my wife was coming off of maternity leave and getting a more senior role at Chevron, was going to be traveling more. And we had a 3-year-old at the time, or a 2.5-year-old at the time, and a brand new baby. And it was just, we were about to hire somebody to come wake up our kids and bring them to school, and hire somebody to pick them up from school in the afternoon because we just neither of us would be there. And that was just an untenable situation. So my wife and I had to sit down. I was like, hey, babe, look, we got a couple deals under where the money has come in. We have this entire pipeline filled with deals that outpace my ExxonMobil salary. Like within the next 6 months, I think we make this. I think we just do it. I think we go. And so
Yeah.
with that, I quit Exxon, went full time into land. But I've had an incredible luxury that I know a lot of people don't have, which is a working spouse for that period of time. And so that's really what let me just pour profits back into the business and maintain a ton of equity. Like I didn't have a deal funder for I didn't like a year and a half or so into the business.
Wow. So you were funding all of your own deals. You were actually, so your model was to actually close on these deals, or were you doing any type of signing or double closes? All closing.
Yeah, all closing. I did not. Yeah, I've done one double close, and it was by necessity. Bought it too high, but I knew there was a good market for it, and just like aggressively dropped the price until we found a buyer where we could make enough margin to make it work, and found a title company that was willing to. Actually, you know what? They weren't even willing to do like a pass through. I still had to bring 95 grand and then get $115,000 check that day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. And what I love so much about your story is you mentioned that you had the working spouse at the same time that you were building your land business. I think that in the entrepreneurial space, W-2s get a really bad rap because everyone's like, yeah, quit your W-2 as soon as possible. JOB stands for just over broke. But I think that if you leverage it the right way, sounds like you definitely did. It provided an opportunity for you to be able to grow your land business at a lot faster rate, right?
yeah, you can think of it like compounding interest, right? Compounding profits instead of having to take out 15, 20, $25,000 a month to whatever sustain my life, my properties, my mortgages, whatever. So just like compounding. And it's I think there were just opportunities where I was able to hold on to more equity than I otherwise would have. And back for those of you who were doing land investing at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, it was you almost couldn't miss. You almost couldn't miss. Even before that, I know it was like that, but through mid 2022, no matter what I touched, like there was a buyer at the other end for significantly more. It was, yeah. And so that was helpful to get really fast turns on those properties.
That's great. So what types of land deals do you specialize in now in your business?
Yeah, no, I really haven't changed much about the marketing, like other than to scale the types of properties I'm looking for.
Mm.
I think recently I've just added more tools to the tool belt. And the primary one is just subdivisions, minor subdivisions, major subdivisions, getting lots where you might not be able to do it as a flip. There might not be enough profit. Even you may not even have enough profit to assign or to sell in the MLS and make a little bit of a margin on top. But by forcing appreciation, they work. Like they work. And they not only do they work, but they perform exceptionally well, some of them. If you find an area that is really has a high demand for the product type that you're going to create and has favorable subdivision regulations, like those two things make a great honey hole, a great spot.
Yeah, excellent. So let's dive into some subdivision topics here. Talk to us about exactly what does your business model look like? If someone is used to flipping infill lots and buying the infill lot, turning around selling the infill lot for a profit, and they want to get into subdivides, can you talk us through what does your business model actually look like when it comes to the subdivide arm?
Yeah. Really what it looks like is every property that comes across my desk, whether it's a flip, just any property that comes across my desk or my team's eyes, it's their desk. We look at it through the lens of, can we add value to this property? Like maybe we just take a step back and talk about my team, how it's set up, and then maybe that'll help think you through it. Okay. So I have an acquisitions team, I've grown to be relatively large at this point. I have an acquisitions manager, and then she has a negotiator, underwriter that works for her. And then we have somebody doing RVM full-time. And then we have 3 cold callers full-time. And then we have 2 texters full-time on the acquisition side. And so their whole job obviously is generating leads. And with texting and with RVM and with cold calling, like those are very labor-intensive lead generation methods. They're instantaneous. You can get in front of a lot of people, but you have to work those leads pretty substantially, or it's just a waste of money and time. And so it may take thousands of conversations before you get something solid through that. And so they're generating leads for whatever. Like it doesn't matter. We're just looking for people who are interested in selling property. It does not matter what kind of property it is. It doesn't matter where it is. We just want it has to fit our buy criteria. And then if we can't do it as a flip, then we might be able to do it as a subdivide. If we can't do it as a subdivide, then we're probably just not interested in the property.
Got it. So you have multiple exit strategies, just depends on the circumstances of the deal, right?
That's exactly right.
Excellent. Let me ask, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had when you started to scale and grow your business? So you had proof of concept, you were a one-man shop. How long did you say you were doing everything by yourself?
I hired my first 2 employees in February. So that's about 5 months into starting the business. I brought on 2 people, and it was like, there's a mental block there. If you've never hired somebody, like there's a mental block that you have, move a fan here, that you have before putting somebody else's being essentially on your shoulders. Do you have the cash flow to support them? What happens if you don't? Like there's all these fears that come into your mind. And so that was the biggest challenge for me, honestly, just like anybody else, was how do I overcome that fear of letting somebody else down or burning through too much cash and like crashing my business before it's ready? That's been like, I think that's a challenge for every land investor who's interested in scaling. Is just, I tell people this who ask me about this question, but it feels like I always was walking on a razor's edge. And I'm holding this bit or high wire, whatever you want to call it. And if you put too much on one side, you're going to fall, right? And that's what it always felt like. So trying to balance that growth with not crashing that business, just that fear, that, I don't know, that apprehension when you haven't done it before.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually having a conversation with Alicia Jarrett about this very topic a couple of days ago. And she was talking about how a lot of times it feels like when you're growing your business, you're actually on an airplane while you're in the air, while you're building the airplane.
While you're
right?
building it.
Yeah. So how did you overcome that fear? Hey, land fans. Looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the Only Land Fans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at onlylandfansgroup.com and join the conversation today. That's onlylandfansgroup.com. See you there.
Honestly, through coaching and just through seeing it working in other people's businesses. And then also like truly running into personal time constraints. Like at that point in my business, I was 5 months in, I had probably $500,000 deployed in equity, like properties that I had either bought or were about to buy, and a couple of sales. I had that first one. I had one that I sold on owner finance. And I think I had another one that had sold by that period of time, or by February, or maybe not even one. I think one had sold by the time I hired these folks. And so my biggest constraint at that point was dispositions. Like I need to sell these properties, but I have 5 or 6 listed now. How am I supposed to negotiate with all the people that I'm talking to on the phone in the limited amount of time that I have, and also properly like get buyers out to my properties? At the time, I wasn't using realtors. I was doing everything on kind of Facebook, lands, that kind of stuff. And yeah, I just ran into a personal time constraint. And I said, you know what? I need to bring somebody in to take care of the sales side because I don't like it. I don't care. I want to negotiate. I want to find the deal on the buy. You make your money on the buy. That's where I want to be. And so I brought somebody in to manage my whole Facebook and list properties, talk to people, get people out to do showings, et cetera. And then the second thing was, man, I hate dealing with companies and sending paperwork and documents and all that kind of stuff. And so I hired a transaction coordinator next to take care of all that. And then the next hire was the next month. I hired an acquisitions manager, and then another one a couple of weeks later, and a sales manager like the next month. And I just, as it started making sense and I was able to do more and accomplish more with my personal time that actually drove revenue, I was like, man, I just need all these tasks that I don't necessarily enjoy, that don't drive revenue. I'm going to offload those.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely love that. How you overcame that fear, broke the seal, hired that first person. And then it sounded like it was pretty quick that you started adding more people, but also identifying like what's bottlenecking your business. For you, it sounded like it was dispo. Something's got to give. So that's fantastic.
Exactly. And that's like still the way that I operate. Every time I run into a constraint or see a constraint coming down the pipeline, like my first thought is, okay, can I handle this? No, yes, no. Okay, then who am I going to hire? What does the role look like? And then I immediately start looking for somebody to fill that role. Like right now, it's an executive assistant. Like at my time, I'm still having to do some like administrative work in my business, which is a lot. I literally just hired 2 other people this week, and now, so I think I don't know, 14 people, whatever. And it is a lot of just payroll, right? It's like calculating their commissions, the way we do compensation. It's signing documents. Like, for example, last week, Monday, I had to go to get documents notarized and shipped. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every single day. None of them came at the right time. There were multiple closings on the buy, and then some are on the sell side, and then some that I had to buy and actually notarize on the buy side as well. And it's, come on, I'm spending 5 hours a week signing documents, and there's so much more. I need help with that.
Definitely. An executive assistant will change your life. For sure. So let me ask you, Justin, do you still self-fund all of your deals, or do you actually use lenders? Do you do JVs, or how's that going for you?
All of the above. Yeah. So I'll do partnerships, JV partnerships. I have yet to not put money into a deal. I don't know. I've never had anybody fully fund a deal. There's only been 2 deals where I wasn't like at least a plurality owner, maybe if not the highest. Maybe if not like more than half of the deal, at least the largest stakeholder in the deal if it's multiple partners. And honestly, those are my dad. My dad wanted to diversify and fund a couple of deals. So I let him take on more risk, which was really helpful to me to like to be able to give him the full basically price and then I funded just a little bit of it. But yeah, so we'll do that. I'll do bank loans. I think I have 6 properties that I just closed out of one of the loans. So 5 active kind of bank loans to fund larger deals and subdivides. And then I'll do lines of credit. I have some unsecured promissory notes from private money, promissory notes, some private lines of credit, and then obviously my own equity and my own money that I put into the business.
Yeah, that's great. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the tips and pieces of advice that you have for someone that wants to use a bank to help to fund these deals? I know that a lot of people are like, oh, you can't, absolutely cannot be done, but obviously it can. So can you talk to us a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So for bank loans, obviously you have to be lendable, right? It helps that if you, when you go to a bank, a couple of things. You're not going to find these, typically, you're not going to find these loans at your big box banks. Like JP Morgan Chase isn't lending you $100,000 to buy a rural 40-acre parcel in Arkansas or whatever.
Right.
They're typically not going to do it. But you're going to need to
Definitely.
find a local small bank that is in the community or adjacent community to where you want to invest. A lot of these banks, these small local banks, they have a charter, and in their charter, they exist to support their community. And so if you're doing deals, especially if you're doing improvement, like force improvement in an area, like they can see that matches with their charter. You're going to make some more value in their community for people, provide a product that maybe their clients want to use. And they also have a duty to put their clients' money to work in safe things that help the community. And so they want to invest. They truly do. It's not hard if you have a good project to pitch your idea to a bank and say, hey, this is what I want to do in the area. Would you consider funding it? What do you offer? Like, can we structure this? And then it's really just like a negotiation with the bank of how you structure the mortgage. Let's see. It helps, obviously helps to be lendable. What the bank requires typically is a personal financial statement. So if you've never done one of those or heard of one of those, you can Google it. There's tons of templates out there, but it's essentially like a full summary of your personal net worth, like your cash holdings, all your real estate assets, any other tangible assets, debts, liabilities, notes payable, whatever it is, you got to write it all out for the bank.
Put it all out there.
Put it all out there. And then they ask for 1, maybe 2 years of personal tax returns, business tax returns. That's pretty much what most of them ask for. And so if you don't have like strong like financial foundation, it's going to be really hard to get a bank to loan to you personally, but you can bring on a partner who does have a strong foundation. And so there's a lot of folks, especially with like development deals, that would love to be an equity partner in a deal that returns 100%. Who wouldn't? And so if you're able to find one and give them some of the equity to co-sign or to be on, like form an entity or something that does this development deal, the bank will consider everybody involved in that transaction to issue the loan.
Excellent. Yeah, that's fantastic. Definitely a page borrowed from like the commercial side of the real estate industry, where you will have someone typically on a team that is lendable and they are the person vouching for the loan. It's very cool. Very cool. I love the creativity in that. So can you talk a little bit about how your business has changed over the years in relation to the market? We've seen lots of different market shifts. The market is a very hot topic that people are talking about right now. Interest rate changes. So can you talk a little bit about how the market has changed the way that you do business?
Yeah, man. I think that the biggest change to my business has just been maybe like financial gymnastics is like an interesting way to say it. I initially was doing cash sales or bank loan sales only, but as soon as like mid 2022, we started having a slowdown of sales, and I was like, and some folks that I knew in the business had been doing notes, and so I was like, how does this work? So I started owner financing and offering owner financing on anything. Like it really doesn't matter what property I have. I will consider owner financing the property because there's a note marketplace. And so my mind really just shifted when I sold my first note to be like, wow, I can turn a piece of land where I have I have less money in it than it's worth by some large amount. And then I'll sell it to somebody. And instead of having this not cash flowing piece of land, I now have a cash flowing asset, which is marketable to tons of people. There are so many people that are just interested in passive cash flow, interested in notes, way more people than are interested in buying a piece of land. And
Right.
so you've created an asset now that is marketable to a much wider audience. And so that's really the main thing I did to adjust was just you get sales faster. You can typically ask a little bit more. People are grateful that you're able to offer something that they might not otherwise be able to get into, a piece of land for their home, for their family. And then in the back end, if you need to, you can sell it, or you can put a bunch of them together and have a pretty solid cash flow.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So Whenever you're creating the note on the sell side, are there some rules of thumb that you like to follow, terms that you typically try to build into the deal? Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's triple-digit flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to olfmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's olfmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit above bank like interest rates. I think people pretty much understand that if they can't get it from a bank, there's a reason why they're underfinancing. They would go to a bank if they could. And so if a bank's at 8, my minimum interest rate's 10 or 11 or something like that. If a bank's at 9, whatever, I just adjust it up some amount. And then I will change the interest rate based on what the person puts down. I'll never accept less than 10% down. It's like the absolute bare minimum that I'm personally willing to accept. I think that if somebody doesn't have any equity in the deal, then they don't have a strong commitment to pay the note. There's just not a lot of skin in the game for them. And so I don't really like that. And so 10% down is the least, and then 10 years is the longest mortgage that I have generated and probably will. I would consider for the right yield if I knew, typically what I'm looking at is what can I sell the mortgage for? And then if based on their down payment and what I think it's worth on the open market, that's going to be my gross sale price. And if that is acceptable to me, then I will do the deal. So I'll just change. I can mess with the terms however we want to get to the minimum number that I'm willing to accept on the negotiation.
Excellent. And do you have a rule of thumb for when you are creating notes on the buy side? Do you create notes on the buy side?
I have not bought anything under financing yet. And it's not for lack of trying. It is not for lack of trying.
Got it. Very good. So let's talk a little bit about what would you say are some of the most important skills that someone needs to have to be successful in the land business?
Yeah, I think a bias for action is probably something that I think is important for people to have. It's hard to be passive in a niche that's changing quickly with the markets, with technology, with regulations. And so if you don't have a bias for action to actually do something and take action to change or to adapt, that you may be challenged. You may be challenged. If you stick with the same thing that isn't working, you may be challenged.
Yeah.
And I think literally, and just even more basic than that, just taking any action, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people maybe just fail to take off because you want to overthink it, right? You want to be sure. It's really hard to be sure. It's really hard to be 100% sure that everything's going to work out. But in this business, you got to spend money before you can make money. It's just how it works.
Wait, so are you saying that I can't make $1 million with like not putting any money into marketing, not putting any money into operating?
So actually, I'm not saying that because I think you can, and I could go into how I think you could do that. But if you want,
let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So and this isn't like some scammy weird thing. This is something anybody could do. Any of us could do this because people are doing it. There are plenty of fantastic value add properties on the market, just waiting for somebody to find them, just waiting for somebody to visualize it, see past the challenges, and push that project over the edge. In that case, you could spend $0 in marketing. You could make an offer on a property that's on the MLS. You could find a funding partner who's willing to put up the down payment, fund it with a bank, put in all the sweat equity, and it could be a deal that's big enough to make $1 million. That's totally possible. So I don't want to say that it's impossible. Totally, it is.
Yeah,
possible.
there's a caveat there. There's a caveat there for sure.
But if you're doing like regular flipping, like without spending any money, it's hard to get leads in front of you. I'd say it's just not at scale.
Yeah, not at scale for sure. For sure. You could definitely drive for dollars, find an infill lot, go and track down the owner for sure. But like you said, for scale, definitely need some kind of operating budget. You mentioned earlier about being adaptable and changing and being able to take action. Continuing in that same vein, where do you see the market going in the next 6-12 months? And what do you plan on doing with your business to thrive in those upcoming market changes?
Yeah, man. We've for a while, for at least months, a quarter, half a year. I don't know. I feel like we've been in this kind of in between market place where the sellers aren't quite caught up to where we think property values really should be based on the time it takes to sell them and what they're going for. If you look all across Zillow, in most markets, not every market, there's always outliers. So please let me caveat that. But there, you can look like there's tons of price drops, land on houses, on a ton of stuff. All right, we're doing it. We dropped prices. We thought we could get something when we got a property under contract 6 months ago. We did some improvement work. Now we list it. And we're like, it's just a little bit lower. And so I think I realize that, and probably all of us as land sellers realize that and are willing to say, hey, this is a business. This is not my family land. I'm willing to drop the price to get this cash turned over. But sellers typically aren't, because it's not hard to hold land. It's not super expensive. Your tax bills are usually relatively low. Most people own these things outright. And so they just don't see the point of dropping. And so it's been a little bit harder to buy. And then on the sales side, people want it for less because they also feel the pinch in the economy. And so it's just this weird gray area. Where are we going? I don't see. This is such a hard question. I know you ask it. I listened to a bunch of your podcasts. I know I wish I had written out some fantastically researched answer, but honestly, I don't see much changes in kind of the vacant land space moving forward. It's not a very leveraged space. There's not a ton of people at high risk for default. I don't see a ton of fire sales coming because it's not super cheap of an asset to hold on to. I think it's just gonna steady and follow slowly wherever the general market goes. That's my personal opinion. So I'm not necessarily changing anything other than to continue to scale my acquisitions and lead flow, because the more deals you look at, the more deals you're going to do. More deals you offer on, the more deals you're going to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that the diversity that you have in your different exit strategies, even adding in the owner financing options, I think that is a really good way to hedge against any type of changes. So you can zig whenever the market zags and vice versa. So I think that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Maybe one other thing that with my strategy that I think gives me a little bit more flexibility than maybe somebody who is assigning or double closing everything they do is that I have a ton of equity in deals right now. And so I can leverage that portfolio. If it doesn't have a bank loan, if something's going really slow to sell, and I always look forward at my cash flow. I look forward at least a quarter, and I plan out what are my projected sales that I have under contract? Where's that money coming in? When's it coming in? When is money going out for payroll, for interest payments to lenders, for buying new property or acquiring new property? I look at all that and I balance that moving forward. And so I can see when a pinch is coming a month, 2 months, 3 months ahead. And that gives me time to talk to a bank. It takes 3-4 weeks sometimes to get a bank to actually issue you a loan on a property. And so if I can see that coming, and so I can talk to a bank and get a loan for at least 80%, 70% of what I paid for it. And that can definitely help bridge any cash flow needs.
Definitely. That's fantastic. That's a great tactic. So let's start drilling down on some nuts and bolts for a minute. So how do you go about finding target markets to do deals in? How do you pick an area?
I am a shotgun type of person.
Okay.
There's a lot of different strategies. People can really niche down in a market. And I think there's a lot of value to having a brand presence, knowing your very specific product type. You can hone your offers. You can train your people to give laser focused offers, and you know what your end profit's going to be typically. I see this really a lot in the infill space. There's a lot of, it's just when it gets that clear, that obvious of what the value is, that's when other people start to move in and your competition goes up. That's what's happening. That's what's happened obviously in the house wholesaling space. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath right here is worth pretty close to the one next door and the one next door and the one next door and so on and so forth. And so you can hone your numbers relatively well in those type of products. And I'm not typically focused on one specific product type. I will basically pull data from an entire state, the entire state, everything 5 acres and up, and we'll market to it. It's not always the best because there are markets where there's not a ton of demand for the product. But when I get a lead in one of those markets where I don't think when I think it's gonna take a while to sell, we just factor that into our offer price and say, hey, look, I think that the property is probably worth this, but I think it's gonna take a year to sell, even at just a discounted rate. So we need to really discount it if we want this thing to turn. And so we can only offer X amount.
Excellent. So When you are, obviously, you have multiple different types of properties that you deal with in your business. Can you pick two or three specific types, maybe like an infill lot or rural recreational, and give us some criteria for those types of deals? What do you look for that makes a great subdivide or that makes a great rural recreational property?
Yeah. So for subdivides, the number one thing that I'm looking for before I look at anything else is really just road frontage. I want as much paved, like maintained or unpaved, but county owned or maintained road frontage. It can be gravel as long as that's an acceptable road in the county. Because in recent years, like in the past 15 years, in a lot of jurisdictions, they've adopted more stringent development rules. And that, a lot of them aren't like crazy, but what typically will happen is like a city, like or a county with a big city in it, will rewrite their subdivision regulations, and they'll put a ton of requirements in there for really how the roads have to be in order to actually cut off of it. And those requirements then get adopted by surrounding more rural but surrounding counties, and that's because it's easier to copy what the big guys do. It's like, why are we going to write them all ourselves? Like, we'll just copy this and adopt them. And then it becomes really challenging to actually split up land there. And so having road frontage alleviates that a lot of times. If you can cut off the road, then that's the best, because bringing so much capital to a deal to put in a road typically will kill a deal. Most deals it will kill.
Right.
And that's why you see all, developers putting in 400, 300, 500 lots that are really small, is because in order to make that development economical, they have to get the lot size down so small. But I'm not typically doing horizontal development. If that's your thing, that's awesome. But that's a really big kind of institutional size product and project. And I think our market, or at least my market, is really the sub-institutional things that are too small for those guys to go after, but maybe too big for your just average kind of flipper, if you will.
So when you talk about size, too large or too small, you're talking about acreage, are you talking about price, both?
More price. More price. Right?
Got it. So if you had to say my bread and butter subdivide is in this neighborhood, what would it be?
My bread and butter subdivide is like a 20 to 80 acre tract anywhere between a purchase price of 50 and like $300,000 I love those. I love those. It's easy to get bank financing if they're really cheap. I have one 50 lot that I'm about to list here. Sorry, not 50 lot, excuse me, 50 acre, 8 lot subdivision that the land purchase price was $50,000. And the improvement cost, I'm clearing about half of it and putting in driveways. And that's only $30,000. And so it's an all-in $80,000 price for this. I don't even need a bank loan to get an incredible cash return on that project.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So coming back to how you pick your target markets, it sounds like you pull a lot of information for an entire state, but how do you choose? I think I'm going to go to North Carolina. I think I'm going to go to Arizona or whatever it is. How do you choose that? And then
like a state. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I just look for states that are desirable for folks to live in. Everybody has their preferences of state, but I like to stay in the Southeast United States personally, because it's warmer. Like, people are generally moving towards those areas as opposed to away. I think less harsh climate allows for a better like real estate market year round. And so there aren't as many like downturns in the winter, whereas Maine or North Dakota, I imagine it'd be hard to do any development work there in December or February. Just probably not much is happening, but in, I don't know, North Carolina, South Carolina, you can still do work in the winter.
Excellent. So if you had to look at all of the deals that you've done, let's say in the last year, do you have a bread and butter type of deal? Is it all subdivides or a majority of subdivides, or is it larger acreage, or what is it?
Man, I have done deals as small as a buy for 2,500 and sell for 12, to as large as buy for 715, put in another 200 grand and sell for 2.5 million. So anything in between there. The bread and butter is probably some average somewhere in the middle. But I would say most of my portfolio is still flips. Like, flips are the engine that runs the business, and the developments are just icing or whatever, like on top. They're dessert. Okay, there are things that I can now do with my regular marketing that I couldn't do before I learned how to do it that just add to the revenue that of the business.
Got it. And so what are your criteria for your flips?
Yeah, just anything I'm marketing. I guess a profit. I have to see like a minimum profit potential. I typically am not looking at anything unless it's $10,000 profit. And even then I usually don't want to do it unless I'm really picking it up for a huge discount at that level. Our average when I do my annual planning, our target profit is $25,000 on a deal. And that's when I was reviewing 2022, we were right at about $27,000 average profit per deal. And so we're right in that area.
Great. Do you have an average size deal that you typically find is in that helps to get that 25K, 27K number? If you're enjoying this episode of the Only Land Fans podcast, please let us know by subscribing and leaving a review. Now let's get back to the action.
I think it just depends on your market, right? So what's the average size deal? Probably 15 acres is probably the average size deal.
Okay.
That I do something like that. But I think again, it really is dependent on your market, right?
Sure.
Because I'm in a lot of pretty rural areas where I can buy property for $1,000 or $2,000 an acre. And then I'm also in areas where it costs $10,000 an acre. And obviously, it's just market dependent. I don't have a good answer for that one. I apologize.
All good. So you mentioned earlier that you have quite an extensive acquisitions team where you guys are doing texting and RVMs, cold calling. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of your strategies and tactics when you're dealing with training these cold callers, texters, RVMs?
Yeah. So my acquisitions manager, who may watch this podcast, because she often, or maybe at least listen to it. She often listens to podcasts that I recommend for her to listen to, is awesome. She's exceptional. She actually came through Clint Turner's VA training program. So I hired her back in early 2022 and he had first rolled it out and brought her on as just like an acquisitions assistant to negotiate and comp, et cetera. But she's moved up into the manager position. And so she has, for the last year, almost 2 years now, been like my negotiator, basically replaced me in the acquisition side. And so we've developed a training program for our employees. We have enough employees now that have experience doing in all of our different systems that typically will start the new employee shadowing. Like they'll get on a Zoom call with one of our more experienced operators for just a week straight and just shadow, ask questions. The other person will watch them do calls or do texting for a couple days as well. And then finally we just say, hey, you know what? They're the 80% of the way there. Let's let them loose. And that's typically what we do for training. On the job, shadowing, actually following somebody else who's already knows how to do what they're about to do.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's a lot easier. I feel like hiring gets easier the more people you have.
Sure.
When you're making your first hire, you're the one training them. You're the one developing the SOPs. You're doing everything. And then you start to hire more people. And then as the organization scales, now your people are training people. And that's when it really gets, those kind of economies of scale for a larger team really start to help out with your own personal time.
Yeah, absolutely. So what platforms do you use for texting and RVMs?
Yeah, so everybody knows texting has been this crazy thing the last 6-ish weeks. I don't know if I was a power user, but I was pretty heavy user of launch control. I had 4 markets that we were doing full time with 3 full-time texters in there at the time. And when launch control went down, and I'd shifted away from, I do mail, by the way. I also mail postcards, mail neutral letters now that I have a large team to answer calls. I don't really do offers anymore. But those, at the time, I had gone away from mail because texting was working so well for us.
Right.
And so when texting stopped, I was like, I had just spun up RVM maybe a month earlier. So I scaled up RVM really quickly. And then do you guys know who Joe Roberts is? He runs a business, a call center, a cold calling center for land investors called Land Caller. And we're friends on Twitter X, or whatever you want to call it. And so I reached out to him to just pick his brain because I had these 3 employees that were exceptional employees that I now basically had idle. Like they weren't really able to work. So I was like, what am I going to do? And so got some advice from him and decided to immediately bring on a cold calling software and get them started basically the next day cold calling. Yeah. So I used launch. So to answer your question, that I was like, what question was I answering? To answer your question, I used launch control. I put it on pause. I have not started it back up. And I'm investigating other texting tools right now, but I have not fully spun up texting again. Although I did just get a text from launch control yesterday, I think, that said they're back to full capacity and like basically exactly what they could do before, except for they've made some changes on what personal information you can use in the very first text. So I'm interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
if you guys didn't know that, it may be helpful to you to hear that. I was on Jesse Kwong's podcast a few weeks ago or a month ago or whatever it was, and we had recorded that 2 days before texting went down. And so I was like recommending launch control. I was like, oh, it's so awesome. That's what I would recommend you start with. And then it went down. So it didn't age well, but now we're all back. So I guess it's okay now.
Awesome. So what software do you use for cold calling?
Cold calling is ready mode. So there's
Okay.
a few, there's call tools, Mojo Dialer. There's a ton of them. You just got to pick which one honestly works for you. But that's the one that I use. And then for RVM, I use Sly Broadcast to drop RVMs, which I think is great. Honestly, I really like RVMs. You just got to be real careful and track your lead, like your contacts really well. And so we use Follow Up Boss as our contact tracking CRM. And so when I pull lists, the first thing that happens is I'll pull a list of whatever, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 people. We'll put it into Follow Up Boss. And Follow Up Boss gets all of the direct skip information. Like when we skip trace, I use direct skip to skip trace, and we put them all in Follow Up Boss. And so we have all these contacts in Follow Up Boss, and we can tag them and put them in different stages, et cetera. And so and our call system is also in Follow Up Boss. So every communication gets tracked right there. And so we'll export the data from there for different batches that we want to do by county is what we do for RVMs, upload it into Sly Broadcast, send out those county batches. And when people call back, they're calling back into Follow Up Boss. And so my employee who manages that system is listening to those voicemails. We typically aren't answering live because there's too many calls to just keep track of. And so they leave a voicemail, immediately listen to the voicemail. And if it's like a really negative voicemail, then obviously we just add them to the DNC. We never market to them again. It's done. Right. You got to keep track of that stuff, because if you actually drop like the same recorded voicemail on somebody twice, like you're really opening yourself up to a potential lawsuit. So you got to be meticulous about tracking who you're sending what to.
That's a really good piece of advice. How are you using all of those different tools? Are they all integrated in terms of you may send out a piece of direct mail, then do a ringless voicemail, then a text or whatever? Do you integrate it that way into one single follow-up system, or do you only text a certain list and not mail, or vice versa?
Yeah, no, it's a phased marketing approach. We try to, because a given list, let's talk about this random list of 10,000 contacts or 10,000 pieces of property with their owners that we have, and we're trying to figure out how to market to it. In that list, if you were to skip trace that list, you may get like 60% mobile numbers. So right there, 40% of your list, you're never going to be able to text. You just can't text them. The software won't let you.
Right.
And so you're missing 40% if that's your only marketing tactic. Now you can mail, right? You can mail that whole list, and presumably most of them will receive it. But there's a whole swath of people of the population, typically people like me, who just see the mail and go, boom, in the trash, done. You're never going to reach those people either. You might reach them by text. You're not going to reach them by mail. There's a whole nother portion of the population that may not get their mail very often, but they will answer the call. They will answer the phone. They have a landline. They will answer the phone. They want to talk. They actually want to do business on the phone. You're not going to reach those people by mail, and you're not going to reach them by text either. And so you got to call them or drop. Actually, I don't know if voicemails work. Ringless voicemails work typically on landlines. I don't think they do. So your really only option is cold calling for those folks. And then a lot of people will call back RVMs. If you have a missed call and it sounds like a reasonably personable message and it has anything that pertains to what you want to do, you have property maybe you thought about selling, you're typically going to call that back.
Got it. Can you give us an example of what a funnel may look like when you're using all of those different marketing channels to market to the same list?
Yeah. So typically I like to start with the cheapest form of marketing first, because when you it's just the most economic use of your marketing dollars. If you're able to, let's just say it's texting, which I'm not convinced it is. It might be ringless voicemail might actually be, I think, the cheapest, but let's just say it's texting. if that's good, if that's your cheapest form, then and you can take out about because you get about I was always getting I said my launch control was getting between 25 and 30% open rate or response rate, reply rate, something like that. And so right there, let's just use 10,000 contacts, right? You upload a list of 10,000 right there, 3,000 of them from that campaign I've responded to you, most negatively. And now you have saved yourself $1,500, $16, $20, $2,000 in mail. You don't have to send anymore because they said no. They said they don't want to do it ever. And then everybody else who was interested, you've now acquired that lead and their contact information in the cheapest way you could. You have their information now. You have access to them. You're already talking to them. So why do you need to now send them another mailer unless maybe they like drop off the face of the earth? And so then the people who don't reply from that, we'd follow up with we put them in a cold calling queue to just start calling them. And that queue just like runs while we're running campaigns. And then we'll drop them in RVM like 2 weeks later. And then a whole different group of people will call back and they'll typically send a follow-up text. And then we may drop another RVM. All the while they're in the cold calling queue unless they get pulled out by replying to one of the other things. And at the end of that, maybe 90 days, 60, 90 days, we'll send a mailer or a postcard. And we're just I have a marketing manager and she just redesigned our marketing flow of how it's supposed to go. And she sent me an email today and I was just so busy. I didn't actually look at it. So it may be a little different now. I don't know. We'll see.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's really good insight. So can we shift gears to the dispo side? What do you do to sell your properties? You mentioned earlier that there was a period of time where you didn't use real estate agents. So can you talk a little bit about what your dispo strategy looks like?
Yeah. So I have the team set up is I have a sales manager who's a US based. He's now a good friend of mine. He was a connection through a friend, but US guy who runs my entire sales side. I really don't do much with it. And then he has two employees that work for him, assistants essentially. One is in follow-up boss, and her big KPI is appointment setting. Like her job is to get people onto properties because properties sell when people get onto the property. And then the other person is in Facebook and doing the listings. And so all day she's replying to our Facebook listings, both the business and the marketplace listings. And her KPI is buyers list, growing the buyers list. Like how many people can she get into our follow-up boss CRM on the sales side so that we can put people in drips. And as new properties come up that fit their buy criteria, we can send them out to them in a timely manner and get as many eyes on the properties as possible. And then we will do some pre-marketing on the sales side. So like before I've actually acquired a property, although I don't like love doing it. I actually just had an issue this week where I have a property under contract. And I think I just, after getting a broker price opinion and looking at a couple of more recent comps, I think I just bought it too high. It's not my typical flip. And so I'm a little worried about actually closing on it. I'm not sure that I want to, unless I can gauge the interest in the area. And so I pre-marketed on Facebook and ran some Facebook ads on it. And my seller saw the Facebook ads. And so she reached out to my transaction coordinator and basically just was like, hey, I think this is a little disingenuous or whatever. Why are we waiting so long to close? This is a little disingenuous that you're trying to sell my property, et cetera. And so we called her and just explained the situation, which was, hey, look, my goal is to get you paid. That is my number one goal, is to pay you the price we negotiated as quickly as I can. However, I think I misjudged the market and I have the ability to sell these properties owner financing. And I'm willing to take $5,000 down on this property. I know you aren't. And so that's my goal. So the reason I'm marking this is because I want to make sure that you can expect the money that I'm going to pay you. I don't want to have to cancel the contract. And I want to find a good buyer and I want to generate an owner finance note with that buyer. And she totally understood, smoothed it over. Those can be really hard. And I've lost a couple of deals from people who were not so receptive to that communication. So if it's a really good deal, if I just have a killer deal, I will not pre-market it. I will wait till I buy it and then I will launch it after I own it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that worked out for you. I know you're probably sweating that.
Yeah. My heart I really care about like how people both perceive my company, but also feel like they're treated fairly. And so when that happens, obviously I can put myself in her shoes and I know that she just felt like I was trying to pull one over on her. And that's the last thing I was trying to do. Anyway, as you guys know, you guys all do this type of stuff. So
yeah. Definitely, definitely. So, can you talk a little bit about what, in your opinion, are some of the most important needle moving activities that a newbie can take in this business?
Man, yeah. At the beginning, define a newbie. Define what does their business look like? Just for
Yeah, so let's say they're a one person show. They've got maybe 2 to 5 deals under their belt. They're trying to scale the business. What do they need to be doing every single day to make sure that they're moving the needle and actually getting deals, doing business?
Yeah, I think most people who, if you've asked this question before, and most people would tell you, and I agree with them, you need to be really consistent with marketing. You have to get in front of people who are interested in selling their property, period. Without that, you will not do any deals. Getting leads coming across your desk is the engine that will grow and sustain your business. Without it, you have nothing. And so that's the first thing I would say. And then the second thing I would say is just be like exceptional with customer service. You will do fantastic if you're promptly calling people back. If you're setting appointments, you are meeting your appointments. If you get a lead and you're letting it sit for a couple days because you're nervous to talk to them or whatever, like that's not a great way to get off on the right foot. When somebody calls you, they want to talk right then. That's why they're calling you. And if you have the confidence and you can get on the phone at that point in time and talk to them, that's fantastic. A lot of people have used Pat Live as an answering service. I did that when I started because I just frankly did not have the time. I was working a full-time job. I couldn't really call anybody back until 6:30 in the evening. And so I had them do that. I think that's a great idea. I've heard some good voicemails recently from folks who have like a voicemail. It's basically, hey, they explain why they can't answer and they'll call them back as soon as they can. And those, I think those are great too, but you got to have something that at least explains why you're not calling them back. And then you got to be real militant about getting on the phone as quickly as possible. I think
Yeah,
those two things would serve a newbie very well.
that's fantastic. That's really good advice. Before I forget, you mentioned that you guys use Follow Up Boss in your acquisitions as well as your sales side. Do you use any other CRMs for like deal tracker, or do you use Follow Up Boss for that?
Yeah, yeah. And I realized I forgot to fully answer your dispositions question. And so maybe just 30 seconds there. I use realtors now. When I buy a property, when I own it, I will list it on the MLS basically as quickly as I can. And then we also use Lands of America. We have a paid account there and some platinum listings for some of our properties. I do Facebook ads. I run ads on Facebook, actually paid ads, which I do target around the area that the property is. And then I use my personal Facebook to post on Marketplace. But we were pretty conservative with it. I'm really just posting one ad in a bunch of groups per day. We cycle through the properties. It's not really a huge thing, but it does generate a lot of buyer leads and has resulted in deals. And so we still do it. And the one thing that I am not doing that I have been telling my sales manager like we need to do for a year is neighbor letters. I know it's effective. So if you are doing that, you're ahead of me there. I need to start doing neighbor letters. So back to your question on CRM. Yeah, Follow Up Boss is more of the contact tracking because I think just the software has a really powerful follow-up kind of sequence that you can plan, these action plans that go off in perpetuity. And it's my entire phone system. So for essentially $600 a month, I think is something like that. $500 a month, something like that, $600 a month that I pay for that software. I have unlimited phone numbers and all of my tracking of my contacts. I have 12 seats or 13 seats now or something like that. And every conversation is tracked and monitored, every text, and all of our people can see like their specific groups. It's just a really well-built software for a larger team. And if you need to separate it. And then I also use Notion. So Notion is a note-taking, multi-use kind of database dashboard app. And so I use that to track my actual deal flow and set up dashboards. Like the one I live on is basically the transaction dashboard. And it shows me all of my under contract properties and then all of my, under contract to purchase, under contract to sell. And then like how long have we had them under contract and when are we closing and what's the status of title and check marks for all of the steps that my transaction coordinator is doing to get those properties moved towards closing. And then some financial planning calculations to help me figure out where money is going out and when and where it's coming in and when, like a little bit quicker than looking at the cash flow analysis that I talked about earlier. So
yeah,
it's kind
great.
it's a mishmash. Honestly, I think Pebble is a really solid CRM for folks. So if anybody has Pebble, I think that's a great CRM. I don't think I don't think you need to switch. Jesse and team are, constantly adding awesome features. And if you have a feature request and other people do, they're probably working on it.
That's fantastic. Excellent. Yeah. I think that a CRM is very personal to your specific business and how you set up your team. And so there's no one right answer, just what works for you. So it's always interesting for me to find out what other people are using. So you mentioned that you spend a lot of time on your transaction dashboard. Can you talk a little bit about what your specific role looks like in your business now? What does your day-to-day activity look like as you function in your business?
Yeah. So other than way too much admin, which I am taking
Which you're working
care of,
on, the executive assistant is coming.
I literally spent 5 hours of my day going through video interviews for app. I had 86 people apply to the position.
Wow.
Which is just insane. So
Yeah.
if anybody is looking for an executive assistant, I have some unbelievably impressive applicants. Unbelievably impressive. So hit me up, and after I've selected, I am happy to help and share, because obviously it's been a pretty involved process. I'm in the process right now. I'm going through and taking very detailed notes on each video interview, how they're answering questions, looking at their resume, so that I can at least initially create kind of an impartial score ranking. And then that way I can take the top 10 and start doing phone interviews so that it's a more manageable process for me. So day to day, mostly project management, dealing with multiple developments, working at the same time. There's a lot of follow-ups, surveyors and engineers, and calling counties and calling attorneys and getting access and writing covenants, or at least working with my attorney who's writing my covenants. So it's a lot of just the bigger picture stuff that I haven't been able to offload yet. And so I do intend on offloading a lot of that to the EA, because what I really enjoy focusing on is the financial side of things. Like, I love seeing how the pieces are coming together. I love looking at how this note portfolio and what we need to do with it to maximize return, whatever it might be. Like finding partners, finding funding, where it's all going. I kind of love looking at that stuff. And I love training my team and growing the team and kind of connecting with the team. I think one of the things that I have not been able to do, because my time is spread so thin, is actually have one-on-ones more frequently with my folks and focus on their professional development. Honestly, I feel like bad for not doing this, but I just kick that to the side because there's too many things coming at me each week that I just can't get to it.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Would you consider yourself a visionary or an integrator?
Yeah. There's no doubt visionary. I'm like totally I only have the wheels and I'm already going to try to take off in this plane. I'm like running down the runway, like pulling wings from left and right.
Yeah.
I'm going to let somebody else organize that, as we do.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Textbook visionary. What, in your opinion, is something that no one or very few people are talking about in the land industry that we should be talking about right now?
I know this question was coming. This always stumps everybody, so I don't feel bad for getting stumped.
You're in good company.
Stumped by this question. I think something that's interesting. How about this? I'll just say something that I think is kind of interesting and how it might affect this niche, but also a lot of other niches, if you will, as well, is just AI voice and AI sales. I'm sure many of you have heard of Air.ai. Air.ai they put out this demo. You can go to the website. They have this demo of their AI, which I assume is interfaced with ChatGPT and basically just text to speech, back and forth, voice protocol, whatever. But it's a customer service phone call, and it's really compelling. If you listen to it, if it's true, it's really compelling. And so I actually called them and tried to understand what the business model was and try to figure out what I needed to do to get an account. But it's a license model where they want to charge you like $100,000 for a license. And then you can sell that license to people and you train this model. But the idea behind it is that you can have a very capable kind of appointment setting and investigative cold caller that is almost infinitely scalable, that you can send out thousands of phone calls at a single time and have thousands of conversations to try to generate leads and appointments. And so I think, first of all, they're charging too much, and it's so early in the technology that other people are going to figure out a solution for way less expensive than what that costs. So that's why I'm letting it see how it plays out. But I think that has the potential to really change the marketing landscape for not just land investors, but for any kind of like peer-to-peer or person-to-person sales.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's a very interesting frontier that AI is ushering in. Do you think the land market, land industry as a whole is overly saturated?
I'm an abundance mindset kind of guy, and so I want to say no. I think that it's hard to get as, how about this? I think there's definitely more people coming in, which is it's getting more popular as other investing real estate investment type things get harder and harder to make margins and make deals work. More people are hearing about it, but really it's like a wholesaler kind of flooding in. I feel like is the main thing. I think margins may get compressed, but I still think that it's actually really hard to price land. You guys know this. It's really hard to price land accurately at scale. And so I think there's always going to be room for people who really know their market to do well. I don't think that's going to go away. And there's a lot of land. There's a lot of land in this country.
Yep, definitely. That's really good. Justin, what would you consider to be your superpower?
Oh, I think it's my willingness to just take massive action. If I see an opportunity, I'm not typically somebody who's going to ponder it and find the perfect solution. I'm at 51%. Just go for it type of person. So that can hurt you. That can hurt you when you're taking on too much risk. I do probably take on more risk than is wise, and so my wife tempers me a lot in that, which is great. That's why it's fantastic to have a partner who helps rein you in. But yeah, I think that's my superpower. It's just like the ability to set my mind and focus on something and like relentlessly go after it.
And what's your definition of success?
Yeah. Success for me is being able to never say, oh, I want to retire. Right. And honestly, I think I'm there. Like, I really do. I've been thinking about this lately. And before getting into land investing specifically, the whole reason why I wanted to invest in real estate, I think a lot of us do, is because I was looking for a way to be able to take control of my time and not necessarily be beholden forever to clocking in at a certain time and producing a certain amount of work. And not to say there's anything wrong with that. It's just for me personally, I wanted to make sure that if I wanted to travel, here's an example. In this next summer, I'm going to manifest this because we haven't actually booked the trip. But this next summer, I'm going to take my family and we're going to go to the coast of Spain or Italy for 3 months.
Love it.
From May through whenever the kids are out of school. And without this business, or at least without some sort of remote work kind of business like this, I would not be able to do that. There's just no way. I could have a ton of money, but I'd still have responsibilities that tie me to a physical place and time that I cannot get out of. And so success for me really just looks like being the master of my time and loving what I do, which I do right now. And yeah, maybe I'm retired. I don't know.
I love that. That's great. What do you think that you do differently in the land space that contributes to your success?
Yeah, I don't know if saying differently than everybody, because it's hard to say that, but certainly maybe differently than a lot of folks would be just my focus on my team. We have everything from the way that I communicate with them to the way our vacation policy is to the way our compensation is all geared towards like the business wins, like everybody wins. And I respect them immensely. Like I don't really refer to them as like VAs. Like they're my employees, they're my team. That's how we communicate. Like they've sent me care packages. I've sent them care. It's just, they're special and I care about them a lot. And because without them, like where would I be?
Absolutely.
I'd still be struggling as a solo person, like trying to scale my business. I'd be way behind where I am now. I'd probably be frustrated because I'm doing everything, the things I don't like and the things that I like. And so I think that, yeah, I really when I was in the military, so I was a submarine officer, when I was in the Navy, one of the things that I liked, that was the thing that I look back on and reflect and say, man, that was the best I felt, or the most fulfilled I felt in my work, was being able to get my guys, my team, my sailors home to see their families by just being like the most efficient maintenance planner and like making sure they got their work done at a reasonable time so they can get home and just serve them in that way. Break down the barriers so that they could do their work effectively and get there and get home and to what really matters, which is their family. And so I try to do that for my team too. Break down barriers, make sure that they are living their lives. Like we give every Filipino holiday, every Colombian holiday, every Argentine holiday, they get all US holidays. And I think because of that, and they're able to work remotely. So if they want to travel and work, like totally whatever. If they want to take vacation, they could take 2 weeks. It doesn't matter. They're on salary as long as we have a coverage plan. And I think because of that, I have just had really like committed and very bought in employees. And that has been like the linchpin of the success I think that I've had in this industry and in this business.
That's incredible. Yeah. You can't go wrong when you invest in people, right? That's fantastic. So, do you have any types of like authors or thought leaders, business owners that you like to follow or read?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of big personalities in like the business space. Talon Faulkner recommended a book to me called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, which you may have here. I don't know. Yeah. I have a couple copies now. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's definitely a Callan recommendation for sure. It's fantastic.
And it just opened my eyes. It really did. It opened my eyes. And so I like the stuff I think the philosophy is fantastic. I recommend it to people all the time. I've bought it for multiple people. And so that's a book that I really, and I respect him. He's a pretty bombastic, like type A, like hyper focused, like high achieving kind of guy. So it's hard to relate maybe to him. I'm more of I don't know, my wife probably wouldn't agree with this, but I'd say I'm more of a like relational kind of person than I feel like he might be. But I respect and really, I like what he is talking about.
Yeah, love that. If you could go back and tell yourself three pieces of advice when you were first starting out, what would they be?
Yeah, I'd probably go back and tell myself the Lord will provide. Maybe help myself have a little more faith in His plan for my life. And yeah, that's I would say that, and I think that would also spur me on to maybe send a little more mail, have a little more faith at the beginning, maybe hire earlier when I was worried, and have faith in that those things were going to produce the fruits in the business that I wanted. But yeah, so I guess in that is multiple things. I would say I would have probably set more marketing more quickly, because something that I've learned after being in this business for several years now is that if the deal is good, there is money. There's money. People will fund it. Partners will come in. You can wholesale it for a fee to somebody else. If the deal is good, there is money, period. And when you don't have a ton of money, you may get really worried. What am I going to do? I think the other thing I would say, okay. And the last thing I would say is go bigger. Like, why not? It's just as easy to do a $500,000 deal as it is to do a $10,000 deal. Sometimes easier because title is typically cleaner and you can get bank loans on it easier. And so it was scary for me to do really big deals at first. I was worried. I was like, man, how am I going to buy this? Like, what if it doesn't sell? It's so much equity and money in the property. But there's always partners. And I think when you're early on, one of the challenges is like you don't necessarily have a track record yet. And so maybe you can't find somebody to partner with where you can maintain a ton of equity. But heck, man, it's okay to give up equity on a deal to get something, to get your, I don't know, get whatever, build up your resume, right?
Absolutely.
It's totally okay. I would have done deals with break even prices just to get the reps and experience, especially subdivides and developments.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Our mutual friend and colleague, Clint Turner, says a half a watermelon is always better than a whole grape.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's all right.
That's absolutely true.
So what's your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
Oh, man. Right now, it is just be the best father that I possibly can be. That is my main goal. I think it's hard sometimes, especially running your own business, where just to be present in your lives, in your children's lives, and with your spouse, with your friends, with whomever, because there's always things that are hitting you and attacking you and vying for your attention. And so I often get convicted when I'm in the several hours a day I have with my children, and like a message comes up, and my wife, bless her heart, love her so much, she always says, "You really need to do that right now." And sometimes the answer is yes, honey, I absolutely do. But more often than not, the answer is no, it could probably wait till the kids are asleep, or no, it could probably wait till tomorrow. And so I'm always trying to get better at that.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I want to thank you so much, Justin. You've been so generous with your time. Let me ask, is there anything that you're currently looking for, resources, connections? How can we give back to you right now?
Yeah, I love networking in the space. I'm going to the Learn Land event tomorrow, I think, as long as my kids don't get too sick and we decide that I can't go. But I'm trying to go. I probably will go to that. I love going to meetups. I just started a website recently, www.justinpiche.com. It's got some coaching consulting stuff on there, and it has a Calendly link to book. But I've been meeting with some folks that have just booked time on my calendar. I have a couple spots set out, but I am interested in taking on a couple of one-on-one coaching clients to help grow their businesses. And I can't do a lot of it because honestly, frankly, it's a better use of my time to focus on my own in terms of just pure monetary. But I really enjoy training, teaching, helping. And so it's really something I'm doing for me personally, something I like to do. And so if anybody thinks that I could be of help to them in their business, I'd love to just have a conversation. You can go to that website, book a call. And then the other thing, this is really awkward because I have no content on there, but I'm going to do it anyway. I just started a YouTube channel. I have one really awkward phone video on there of just me like 3 minutes explaining my name and kind of what I would do. And I just recorded a video last night that is terribly edited because I'm not a video editor, to be frank. And I'm about to upload it there. So there will be one 33-minute video. And in it, I'm going to break down the $2.5 million development that I am working on that is about to be approved in less than a week for sale. And so if you're interested in that, go to the YouTube channel and check it out. It'll be there sometime, and give me tons of grace because, like I said, guys, I'm new to YouTube.
I love it.
I will say, Kendall, you do a fantastic job. You have this confidence on the camera, and I love it. I really do. But it is truly nerve-wracking, especially to talk to a camera when nobody else is in the room.
When no one's watching. Yeah.
The conversation is great. Like, I love this. I love dialogue. But when I'm just talking by myself, I'm like, man, I feel awkward. Anyway,
yeah, I definitely get it. I definitely get it. Thank you so much. I have a team that helps to put everything together and make me look way better than I actually am. So my videographer, my video editor, they're absolutely incredible. I give them all of the credit for that. But Justin, thanks so much for joining us. Go check out justinpiche.com. We'll also have the link to his YouTube channel in the show description and in the comments as well. Thanks so much, guys. Again, Justin, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. I hope that everyone is on the mend there. That way we can get you to Dallas tomorrow. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. We'll keep the good vibes going. Everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you in the next one. We'll be back next week with another masterclass as well as an interview. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. Until then, be great. Have a good one. And we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.